now let me show you the difference to how I actually recorded. Can you tell how like that just has a completely different kind of swing and quality? Hello and welcome back to RapidFlow. My name is Erik, I'm the founder, and at RapidFlow we do everything we can to make you faster in the studio. Today I'm going to be covering a topic which I think is hyper essential for electronic music producers, and this is a topic that I will admit took me the better part of a decade to figure out. My tutor in this regards was the Multiclock by RM, which just made me much more susceptible to micro timing. And while I was making this remix of this classic Hallucinogen track, I realized this is a great ground to show you. So let's have a listen. So yeah, if you've been in the psytrance scene at any point, or I was there from the beginning, and I was very lucky to just hear this track when it was basically still unreleased. I think one of the best and most influential trance tracks ever written. The point of all this is when I started making this, I quickly realized there were some parts where my new parts that I added to this didn't really slot in, and I realized actually this is a perfect track to show you all the strategies for dealing with this problem and how to go about actually making sure that your grooves and your basses and everything hits right, whether you're making your own track or a remix. I was really happy when I dialed in this bass. This bass actually produced all of this, most of this on a live stream. So if you want to see that, I'll link that in the description. And all of the sounds that are additional to this track were done with Zensphere. And I was really happy when I was able to lock in this groove to the original track, because it's what I felt I really wanted to add to this, is something that was more modern. However, if I go in here and show you this bass line, and this is, I think, now where we're really starting to get to the point, you can probably see it's nowhere close to being on grid. And I think this is the first tip I could give you, is don't be afraid to go off grid. I actually made this bass line by sequencing it with the Torso T1. And I always just kind of dial that thing in with the Multiclock so that it feels like it's right. And then in themselves, all of these notes on this track are within a certain groove, but they're not exactly on the grid. So how do you get to a place where this starts to feel really natural and where it's easy to make these kind of choices and decisions? The very, very, very first thing that I can recommend you is to make sure that your kick drum is absolutely tight on grid. Because if your kick drum is like unclear on the grid, if it's not really on the money, and you try to build your track, then it basically becomes impossible to get things really tight. So the way to do this is to solo your kick, switch on your metronome, and if I play now, they're super, super tight and really close to each other. Like sometimes I would even try to get them a little bit closer, but they're close enough. Let me show you how this should not sound, because this is the foundation. If you don't get this right, everything from here will become 10 times more difficult. Let's assume that you set your kick drum up. I'm going to exaggerate this sort of to make it easier to hear. Let's assume you set up your kick drum like this. You don't really notice it when you don't have the metronome. Let me put back the metronome. Can you hear how the kick is behind the beat? Let's exaggerate it a bit more. Like hopefully that would not happen to you, but even that's already a big enough difference for this later in the track to not feel right. Let's have a listen to this kick in the track, maybe it works. And now let me go back to the actual kick that I'm using on this track. Do you hear how massive the difference is in the micro timing of where the kick is kind of like cutting through the music and hitting in the track? So this is the first thing. This is the first tip I can give you, that if your kick is not really on point, in essence, to the grid of your track, if there's like looseness or some plugin that's not reporting its latency correctly, so it's not being compensated, there's like a million things that can go wrong here. So start with your kick drum being super tight on your click. I usually tend to listen to phasing, then I'll know that it's like really tight. Second thing now, let me show you what this bass line would sound like if I had recorded it perfectly on grid, because this was sequenced using the multi-clock, and we're going to get to it, so please bear with me. So I'm going to select all the notes. I'm going to just move them to be on grid, and I'll have a listen. And now let me show you the difference to how I actually recorded them. Can you tell how like that just has a completely different kind of swing and quality? There's a way to show the actual difference in timing here. So what is this? It's so small that it just shows it as a plus. We're talking about micro timing here. Like it's way before a 132. Like maybe it's even less than 1/64th quantized. And this really is something that I learned by using multiclock. In case you've been living under a rock for the last 5 years, it's a device which gets audio from your computer. It's connected to my headphone jack here. And that audio gives it a clock, which then it translates to MIDI clock. The advantage of this is that audio processors are much more high priority and high fidelity. Like, you know, sampling something at 44 or 48K is very different to the MIDI standard, which is leaps below that. So this is getting a very constant hard locked pulse to the DAW, and then it's generating a very stable MIDI clock from that. So that's already very cool. But the really amazing thing is that you can grab these rotary encoders and then tweak them to shift your MIDI timing around the DAW. I've added the Zensphere, which is our in-house VST synthesizer, and I've selected a patch from its presets, which is just really clean and really simple, no effects, no delays, nothing, so that I can show you something using the Waldorf Iridium, which is sitting here, which has a really, really great arpeggiator. The main thing about this is it's synced to the multi-clock. While I press play, and right now, you should hopefully be able to tell that this is not really tight. It's not really in sync. So let me show you now what happens if I start tweaking this with the multi-clock. So it's now 53-ish, 55 milliseconds earlier. And now actually it starts to feel in a place where it makes sense to this track. So for example, if I now add a bit of delay and a bit of life to the sound to just kind of, you know, give it a vibe. Let's have a listen again. It's a little bit early. I'm going to move it a little bit. This is something that I learned basically by using the multi-clock, like being able to turn a rotary, and I'm going to show you how to do this in a sec with software also, but being able to turn a rotary trained my hearing to listen to these micro timing differences to the point now where when I hear something in a track is like ahead or behind the beat, it's kind of like DJing, but it's like you can kind of tell it's like it's not really on point. But I think in the context of producing music, the differences are somehow more minute. Or I'm an idiot because I didn't really hear this for like the first, I don't know, 10 years of my music making career, at least not properly. I got lucky sometimes. Sometimes things felt good, but I didn't really know what I was doing. Let me show you how you could actually do this also in software. What I'm first going to do is track this in as a good MIDI clip. Let's track this in now. So now we have what is a MIDI clip that feels nice. Let's dive in here and let's have a look at where these MIDI clips actually landed. Now look at that, isn't that crazy? And as a matter of fact, actually some of them are more heavily delayed than others because the incredible Waldorf Iridium has a swing setting that I love. It's set to 55, that's kind of my personal default, 0.55. And that's why it sounds the way it sounds in the track. Now let me show you what this would sound like if it was hard quantized. Like it's all there. Like, you know, that was how I started with my music production. I was like, yeah, it's all there. Like sometimes I got lucky by adding delays and whatever, but listen to the difference. So So you hear how there's like a whole different kind of movement to it. Okay, so right now we have the basic foundation of what could be a cool arpeggio. So there's a couple of techniques I can show you for fixing this in the DAW. And this obviously applies also if you've captured some MIDI notes, because like you can see there's some delay and stuff at where it starts. I've selected all the notes, and if I hit Command, I'm able to now move all the selected notes without gridlock. So I can grab all of them and just like test like how would this feel if all this MIDI was coming in a bit later. Let's try it again, even further back. So behind the beat. Like now it's super shuffled. I want this a little bit earlier. Okay, that's starting to get there now. Sometimes changing the octave can actually give you a better view on what's happening. Like it depends on the frequency ranges. So let's listen to this again. Maybe a little bit earlier. Okay, so that feels good now. The only thing that's actually throwing me off a bit is the timing of the delays. So let's fix that quickly. This is something that with Zensphere we try to make super easy. So what I'm going to do is remove the high cut so I can hear a bit better. Okay, so I hope you'll agree with me that now it's actually feeling right, like, you know, it feels in the right place in the music. Another technique that you could use is, let's assume now that you've recorded audio, and I actually had to do this on this remix because, as you can see here, I've clipped this audio because it wasn't really feeling right against the kick and basses that I'd made. So let's have a listen. What a melody Simon made here, oh my God. Let me show you what you can also do in order to fix stuff like that. So if we want to experiment with the timing of this beautiful melody against the kick and drum that I've built, what you can do again is the command trick. So check out what's going to happen with this clip when I start shifting my start point. You see how it's actually in essence pulling the file further forward? This is much easier in my opinion than going in here and starting to move this file around. It has a lot of other advantages, but trust me, this is a really, really great way to do it. So let's have a listen to this, where it sits against my kick and bass now. However, where it originally was recognized by Ableton was actually here. Listen to the difference. Like it just felt like it was dragging. It was a bit behind the beat. It wasn't really in the right place. Let's listen again to where it actually landed. So this is a third technique, which is shifting the start point of your clip so that in essence your clip starts playing sooner. It's still going to loop, you know, through the whatever loop you may have used, but you're just moving where it's going to come in when you press play. Really, really nice technique also. The last thing from top of mind right now that I want to share with you is a technique to deal with snares. I'm going to show you a really nice tool. InPhase Light Stereo. That's the one we want. It's a tool from Waves. I know Waves is not super popular, but this is a great tool, so I can highly recommend it. I tested a lot of different plugins. This is the only one that does what I'm going to show you now. If you have other suggestions, please put them in the description because I'd love to know. So I'm going to throw myself a wrench in the machinery, and I'm going to purposely screw up my timing of this snare a little bit so I can show you what a cool technique this is. I'm going to make this whole snare a little bit late. Now let's have a listen. So the snare feels late right now. I used to be a drummer. It's kind of embarrassing that it took me so long to figure all this stuff out, but listen now. You hear how it's like really punching now, where you want to get that punch on the floor when you're raving away. Let me show you this really sick fix using this really weirdo Waves plugin that I discovered. What I'm going to do now is open up the mapping, and you see this parameter here called alpha delay. I'm going to map this. I'm going to map you here. Okay, there we go. Now it's mapped. I can now use a rotary encoder to shift the impact of my snare seamlessly, because that's the thing about this plugin. It does it seamlessly. The other ones like jumble the audio and you don't hear what you're doing. Seamlessly shift this snare forwards and backwards in my track. Check this out. Now I fixed it. I'm gonna make it late. Way too late. Let's make it early. You notice how it's like preemptive? It's not really feeling like it's pushing the track forward. Now let's make it right. So yeah, this plugin to fix timing topics, it's just, yeah, like the combination, I guess, of all these tools that I'm showing you today is what got me to the place where I was like, I've kind of sussed this now. And actually I have this plugin on my hi-hat open, which I always do with Microtonic for various reasons, which I've covered also on the channel. I'll do a whole video on Microtonic one day because it's such a cool thing. As you can see here, my hi-hat open has a delay of 3.84 milliseconds. Now, some people will say you can't hear that. I think that's bullshit. I definitely think you can hear that. Let me assign, again, this little alpha delay to the knob next to it. I'm going to basically put it on 0. And now let me show you the difference with this up hi-hat. Let me put it, which was around 3.8 milliseconds delayed, right? Let's have a listen. Remove my snare. I'll put it on 0 again for you. I don't know, like I hear a huge difference. It doesn't feel right. Let me put it early a bit. So you feel like, what if the hi-hat's pushing the track too much? Let's put it back. Let's put it way back in the track. Let's put it late. And now you can hear it's way too early and it's out of time. Now it's too late again. So first of all, you need to be able to train your hearing to hear these things. And, you know, my path there was the Multiclock, because that's the first time I had a rotary encoder where I could really hear this. I'd found something similar before using this workflow that I just showed you with the Waves plugin, which again gives you a rotary encoder that you can use to shift things in time. But the Multiclock was what really trained my ear on this, because it was more direct and I was just using it all the time with all kinds of arpeggiators running synchronized to the track. And then I was like, whoa, what a difference this makes to the bass line and whatnot. So I wanted to show you these workflows because I think this is one of the somehow least covered topic in electronic music. I don't know, I don't think I've ever really seen a video on all this. I wish I had. It would have saved me a ton of time trying to figure all this out. But hey, here it is. I can share it with you, which is awesome. I've never used the track delay function in Ableton because I'm sure that's going to come in the comments. I've read that when you bounce, all that stuff doesn't actually get included in the bounce. So just reading that, I was like, I'm not going to touch it because this system definitely gets bounced with the track, and it has the advantage of being a rotary knob that you can hear in real time because it's a plugin and it's not like a number you're typing into a little Ableton box. So that's it from me today. This is what I wanted to show you. If you like what you saw, please give this a thumbs up, subscribe, like, send us money, send us coffees, whatever. The main thing is that you get something from this. And actually, the thing that would be most awesome is if you send us links to tracks that you've done where this is played a part. That would be sick to hear. I would love that. And then finally, to let you know that end of January, Rapid Flow is starting an online music school where I'm going to be teaching all of this stuff from the ground up, like doing a full brain dump on all of my knowledge after 25 years of sound engineering and music production. So if that's something that you could be interested in, check out rapidflow.shop. I'll put a link also below where you can sign up for the school. It's a 3-month program, which is going to get you to a state where you can produce music in a state of flow, getting incredible mixes really fast. I'm talking like a track in a day or two. And after that, there's more modules that you can opt into if you want to go into sound engineering, deep dive, or live performance, YouTubing, all that kind of stuff. We're going to have a Q&A every week, and you actually can even book one-to-one coaching sessions with me at a reduced price. So I really hope to see you there. I'm going to leave you with a playthrough of this track just for fun, so you can hear how far I've gotten along with this rework of this incredible track by Simon Posford. I think this is probably one of the earliest tracks when I first started to really get electronic music. So I'm going to leave you with this now just for fun, so you can have a listen. I hope to see you on the next video. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
I believe with the advent of acid, we discovered a new way to think, and it had to do with piecing together new thoughts in your mind. Why is it that people think it's so evil? What is it about it that it scares people so deeply? Even the guy that invented it. What is it? Because they're afraid that there's more to reality than they have confronted. That there are doors that they're afraid to go in, and they don't want us to go in there either, because if we go in, we might learn something that they don't know, and that makes us a little out of their